Welcome to Gideon's Promise, the podcast with Jonathan Rapping. In the landmark 1963 decision Gideon v. Wainwright, the U.S. Supreme Court unanimously ruled every person accused of a crime in America must be provided a lawyer, regardless of their ability to pay. This podcast is about the people that uphold that promise, public defenders. These dedicated lawyers give voice to 80% of the people thrown into the system, and yet in the national discussion regarding justice reform, public defenders are largely overlooked. This show centers public defenders in that conversation. We will explore the critical role public defenders play in addressing a wide range of issues facing marginalized communities with subject matter experts, key opinion leaders, and people impacted by the American criminal legal system. Listen as a community of advocates discuss their work to strengthen public defenders and transform public defense. Well, welcome, everyone. I am so excited for today's interview wrap. We got some dynamic women in the house in our living room.
Yeah, I'm so excited for this interview.
And this is the only time I'm going to let this level of fabulousness in our house, all these women in our house in the first place. But I'm so excited because we have here, I would like to welcome Martisa Johnson, who is the Chief Defender of the Nashville Defender Office in Tennessee. She is also a member and alum of the Gideon's Promise class of 2009. Welcome, Martisa.
Thank you. Nashville's in the house.
And also joining Martisa is Aisha McWay. She is the current Chief Defender of Still She Rides in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and she is an alum and a member of the class of 2010. Welcome, Aisha.
Thank you. 2010 in the house.
And finally, Shantae Parker, who is the Chief Defender of the Neighborhood Defender Services of Detroit, a newly formed office, and she is
so cold in a D.
Cold. And she is a member of the Gideon's Promise class of 2008. Welcome, Shantae.
Thank you. So happy to be here. 08.
So if anyone is this the first time you've ever, we have what we call traditionally class shout outs in our organization, and you represent your class at Gideon's Promise. So even these alums who have been, out of the core program for a number of years still represent their class in any way possible. So when you hear them shout out 8, 09, 2010, it's all about love for for their class and their class members. So welcome. I'm so happy to have you here today. And we have a ton of questions. There's so much going on in the country today. And just to have you all, you great dynamic women leaders, the next generation of women chief defenders in the house, is just an honor to have you here.
Yeah, and Illy, can I just, before you go to the first question, I just want to say that this is a really exciting interview for me because I think the three of you represent in so many ways kind of the entire theory of change of Gideon's Promise. All of you started your legal careers as young public defenders. You have risen up to lead public defender offices, and you all sort of took different paths. Martisa, you're in an office that you started in as an intern, came through as a young lawyer, and now are running the office where you've always been. Aisha, you started in the same office as Martisa, but then decided to go to Tulsa to become the executive director for another office that was recently established. And Shantae, you started your career in New Orleans and then went to Neighborhood Defender Services of Harlem. And you actually went to Detroit as the first leader of that office. You're building that office. So each of you really have gone to build offices and run offices in real different ways, but you're all, public defenders who have gone on to continue to help lead this charge. So it's exciting. You guys are the future.
And so Martisa, I'm going to start with you. Since you started at Nashville as an intern, there have been years and years, there have been changes, right? Your office has evolved over time. What has been your greatest accomplishment and greatest challenge where you work in terms of building a community-centered office?
Wow, that's a great question. I mean, I'm going on 12 years here in the Nashville office, if I include my internship time, then we're talking close to 14. So I really have spent the great deal of my adult life doing work right here in this office, and we have transformed. I mean, when I started here as a lawyer, I would say the concept of being client-centered, while I really believe the lawyers here were doing that work, the term and the concept of it was a new one for our office, and one that initially kind of caused a little bit of divide about what we were talking about and what it meant to sort of shift the culture into this client-centered mentality. I think some of the greatest accomplishments that I've witnessed here and been a part of are sort of shifting our model into being client-centered, to really sort of being transformational in how we defend people, how we now really speak up about injustices in the city as a whole. We sort of transitioned from just being like warriors inside of the courtroom to really being the voice about how we should be doing things in this city. So not just day-to-day direct representation, but also speaking up about policy and policing and other issues in this city that people need to pay attention to. And so that has really been, I think, our biggest accomplishment. The thing that I'm most proud of is that, we are often beat up by what happens over at the courthouse, but we are not any longer just sort of sitting there and kind of taking that and really taking our message more broadly and showing up more for our clients, which I think has been great. And I'm happy to have been a part of for this long and now leading the efforts.
And Aisha, your office is very unique. Can you share with our listeners what makes your office a little bit different than the traditional public defender offices, and what has been your greatest accomplishment and or challenge in building Still She Rises?
Sure. So our office is newer. We were created in 2016 and opened our doors to clients in 2017. And so we're a fairly new office, and we are not the county or state public defender. We are a completely private office that takes cases for no charge, so completely pro bono public defense representation, but not appointed. And so our model is focused on representing mothers in the criminal legal system and as well as in the civil legal system. So a couple of things are, I think, beneficial and unique about our office is that we provide client-centered and holistic representation under this understanding that people are more than the moment that's bringing them into this need for representation. And so we understand that people have unique challenges that bring them into the system, and we are trying to work to combat those challenges both in the courtroom and outside of the courtroom. With that comes really a lot of challenges. We focus on mothers in a state like Oklahoma. We're located and based in Tulsa, because of the unique position of Oklahoma having the highest incarceration rate for women for the last 2.5 decades. And so our founding and our model is based on an understanding that Oklahoma is clearly not getting it right when it comes to incarceration. And we talk about the numbers, but there has to be an effort put forth of doing something about that. I think when it comes to greatest accomplishments or challenges, I hope my greatest accomplishments are ahead of me, but I think I am proud of both things that have been challenging and, really rewarding, which is when I came into the organization, we did a lot of work to really structure our program and our work intentionally by defining our mission and defining our core values and redefining our vision and our methodology. And that all of that may seem really technical, but for us, it's really how do we live out the values that we believe in? And it's work that I think is critical to how we navigate and how we exist within this community. And so when we say client-centered, defining with all of the team members, what do we mean by that? When we say catchy terms like holistic defense, what does that mean for us? And being able to do that collaboratively with my team is something I'm both proud of, and also, the process of it is incredibly challenging, especially when we're the only people oftentimes in spaces that see those values as being the most important. So I think the most challenging piece is doing this work in a place that is Oklahoma. It's really challenging to be the only people in the room who are respecting the dignity and humanity of our clients and really valuing that. I think it can be disheartening, but it also is the driver for why we exist.
And Shantae, I learned something new every day. Aisha, first of all, I didn't realize Oklahoma had the highest incarceration rate of women in this country. So I tell you, even doing this show, you all teach me something every single time I have this opportunity. But Shantae, I learned about your office, right? And in Detroit. So the Neighborhood Defender Services of Detroit, and please correct me if I'm wrong, there was service provided to indigent clients prior to your arrival, prior to the start of your office last year. But was there not a fully functioning public defender office in one of the major cities in the country, in Detroit?
Yeah, there was certainly an office here, fully functioning. I think that's up for interpretation. The office was certainly underfunded and under-resourced. And so through the efforts of the Michigan Indigent Defense Commission, which is a statewide body recently constituted to improve services for all folks who can't afford an attorney throughout the state, they were able to infuse some funds into the local system to increase the amount of funding that was available to a public defender office here in Wayne County. And so rather than just give that money to the office that was here, the county decided to do something different and ask for bidders to come in and get proposals to put together an office. And so my office, Neighborhood Defender Service, which has been in existence for 30 years in Harlem, put in a bid and was fortunate enough to get that. And so when we talk about achievements, I think my greatest achievement in public defense, as I agree with Aisha, I feel like I have a long life ahead of me and lots to do. But with regard to public defense, I would say my greatest accomplishment is being able to come to Detroit last summer to hire over about 70 people at this point and to open up an office that is now fully functioning, taking cases, representing people at the level at which they deserve, providing client-centered holistic representation, and being able to keep that office open and functioning during a global pandemic. I think my greatest challenge in this position is continuing to push the kind of culture change that we set out to do here, which I think is our mandate, which is to change the culture of the courts and the way that people do indigent defense work in the county, to raise the level and standard of practice. And so I think that it's what I've learned is that people get really comfortable really quickly. And so to figure out how to continue to push folks to do and give their best and to push the culture and push what they're providing every day, every week, every month and year is a challenge for me.
Yeah, no, so I've got to say, I mean, you three are three people who keep me incredibly hopeful and optimistic. And you all have heard me say this many times, and anyone who's heard the podcast before will know this about me, but it's worth repeating. I'll repeat it every chance I can. And that is that I really think that we can't transform our criminal legal system until every community that's impacted has a public defender office with a leader that truly sees them as people worthy of respect and takes seriously the obligation to work in alliance with those communities to fight for justice. And I think about, Illy's story that everyone who listens to this podcast has heard, where as a 5-year-old girl, her father was given a public defender who was beaten down, who didn't seem to care, who didn't tell his story. And it didn't just impact his life. He was sentenced to 10 years in Attica, but what it did to a 5-year-old girl and to a family. And so I think what we all understand is that the absence of a public defender office that cares about community is a critical piece of the mass incarceration story. And I believe until every office in the country has leaders like you, we can't really have transformative justice. So for me, what you all are doing is the most important work in the system. I'm grateful to you. I mean, Shantae, I was honored to spend some time with you a little over a year ago and meet your leadership team as you were beginning to open the doors. And as much as I'm sure it feels, every day like it is a struggle, what you've been able to accomplish in a year is amazing. And all of you have. So let me ask you this. The nation is focused on reforming the criminal legal system. And what role would you say public defenders play in truly transforming the system? And let's start with you, Shantae.
I think the role of a public defender is to shine a light and expose and be a witness to what's actually happening in the criminal legal system. I don't know if I believe in the reform piece of it, but I do think we're there every day. We are, some folks say we're first responders, with first line. So we can say and see and talk about what's happening to folks who are being processed through the systems every day in every corner of this country. And so our role is to shine a light on that and to try to throw a wrench into that system every time it tries to grind over individuals. So I think that's our role, is to show people how heinous, how cruel, how punitive, how harmful it is, not only to the individuals who are in the system, but also to their families and their communities. I think that's the greatest role that we have to play.
Aisha, what role do you see public defenders playing in transforming the system?
So I think one of the things that strikes me about the question and something that I think Shantae was sort of alluding to is that, one, it takes not just public defenders, it takes quality, good, committed public defenders to have any impact, I think, in trying to transform the legal system. And I think it can't be lost in this conversation that there are, not all public defenders are committed and good and invested in doing the work in a way that respects and sees the dignity of clients. And so I think that transformation is really tied to having public defenders who believe in the ability to transform systems. I think it's really complicated and really, really difficult to transform systems where we can't be the only people who are committed to that transformation. And I think that is, I think it's critical that public defenders are involved in those conversations, that you see those folks having seats at the tables, that these conversations are happening at. I think as we're having, we're getting ready to transition with this new administration, and in all of the sort of recommendations, there is not a public defender seated at that table. There's not that voice. And I think, could there be some positive reform that comes out of this administration? Absolutely. But does the voice of a public defender need to be at that table? Absolutely. And does the voice of a quality, committed, zealous public defender who sees their clients and the dignity of their clients need to be at that table? Without a doubt. And I think it's hard to even begin to think about how the entire legal system in this country overhauls when we're constantly left out of we're out of the rooms and nowhere at the table, right? And I think part of the challenge, though, or part of the call in this is that there is value in the individual representation, and that is transformative, I think, to our clients. And while we are constantly wanting to transform the system, some of us, want to burn it down. Some of us want to do different things to make the system better for our clients. It is a real significant role to be a public defender in an individual's life and in their representation, I believe. And I think that is transformative, and that has an absolute impact into what this system looks like overall. But I think we still have a long way to go to transforming the entire legal system in this country, or even for me in the state of Oklahoma.
And Martisa, let me ask you, because you mentioned sort of coming to the realization that public defenders have to do work both in the courtroom and outside of the courtroom in the community. And obviously, when you're doing that work, whether it's in the courtroom or in the community, you are taking shots. Public defenders feel beaten down. I'm sure you have staff members who are disheartened every day. How do you keep your office motivated as a leader? How do you steel people for this incredible struggle both in the courtroom and beyond?
Let me say I 100% agree with my sisters in the struggle in their comments about transforming, which the word that includes reform is just troubling to me in this moment. And I've struggled lately with what I think we can do with the system. It is incredibly hard to balance the direct fight in the courtroom with trying to increase awareness. See, I see us as Shantae said, ringing the alarm. We're raising the awareness. We're witness to what's happening. And so in turn, we use that to educate communities to hopefully then assist in their empowerment to make the change. I don't think that we as public defenders can make that change alone at all. Our communities are the ones that can be empowered to do so. And so it is a struggle to get people to, what we're asking is to change their mentality. Some people started to do public defense work because they wanted to represent people in court. And so you're asking them to add to what they already have dedicated themselves to doing by also doing community-based work and initiatives that I think are incredibly important. And so pre-COVID, I think keeping people motivated was trying to lead by example, trying to, show our staff the greater good that comes with partnering with the community, what we can do when we take a message or when we take an issue and increase our allies and increase our voices that makes a larger voice for change. And right now, though, with trying to do this work during the pandemic where we are seeing just the harsh realities of what we already knew. We already knew that people lacked humanity and didn't see our clients for who they are, but we're seeing that tenfold now. And so trying to keep people motivated is really difficult. So I am currently leaning on sort of my support system of people to keep me motivated, wherein then I just try and increase my communication and increase my efforts to show appreciation to my staff. And I honestly shoulder a lot of the burden of doing the community work and empowering the community through our messages and press releases and things like that. I sort of carry that burden right now.
And so you talk about the support network. And so, Shantae, I'm going to direct this to you and then everyone else, please chime in. So what I noticed as we were getting ready to tape this podcast, Aisha called Shantae called Martisa to make sure everyone was on the line, right? So you all have each other, right? Somehow you're connected via text and phone. And right now, in terms of keeping you motivated, I am watching the news. I am being approached by different corporate leaders. Women of color have been rising to leadership positions, right? And the spotlight has been on women of color rising to positions, but also the nation has been placing women of color, especially Black women, in these leadership positions. Why is the nation now focused on Black women leaders?
I think that, a couple of things. I think that it's one reason why there's some focus on Black women is because we are traditionally the folks who are organizing our communities and leading change in our communities. And so I think now we've been doing that for a very long time. I think now is a moment where people are recognizing that. I think about Stacey Abrams and the work that she did to flip Georgia blue, right? So I think that people are recognizing that and giving her her due and the flowers there. But we've always been doing that work. And so, but I'm also sort of skeptical about how long this moment's going to last because, you know, the attention span of this country is very short. And there's a backlash against, you know, misogynoir, right? Hatred of Black women that will come from this moment. So, but the thing is that I think is great about Black women leaders and the Black women community is that we're going to continue to do the work regardless, whether we have the spotlight on us or not, because we are saving ourselves, we're saving our communities, because we see up front, right, what's happening to our loved ones, particularly with regard to the criminal legal system, the way that it churns through our loved ones and our communities, the harm that it causes. And so that's why I think you see us at the forefront of movements and revolutionary change because of the harm that we know it causes.
So Aisha, I was at a women's a social distancing gathering outside not too long ago with a diverse group of women. And I have to put that disclaimer in because I am in Georgia right now. We already know our numbers are rising. But I was just at a women's group and someone mentioned, a friend of mine said, oh, the glass ceiling is now broken. And this kind of goes back to what Shantae was saying. Has the glass ceiling really been broken?
I would say that the ceiling has probably been broken in some houses, but definitely not across the nation. I think there are still limitations when we think about what the glass ceiling represents. There are still limitations and barriers that are placed upon women, Black women, other women of color in this country. And to pretend that does not continue to exist would be that would not be honest to me. I do think that one sort of tying into something Shantae said, I do think that it is interesting that it feels almost like because there has been this almost surge or this momentum that this moment feels like it's totally eradicated. But I think when you go into places and different pockets that are less progressive or less blue, as Shantae said, or just less open-minded, the feelings still exist in some of those spaces. And there are spaces that I am able to navigate and enter into that I probably wouldn't have been able to enter before, and I'm appreciative of that. But it doesn't mean that feeling doesn't exist in other spaces that I am not able to enter into. And so I'm not convinced that the entire feeling is gone. I'm appreciative to get some of the invites to some of the houses, but I still think we have a ways to go.
Martisa, Aisha mentioned, less progressive, and you're in the state of Tennessee, which is a mix going on based on what I witnessed over the.
I don't know if I would call it a mix. So it's a blue dot.
It's a blue dot and a sea of red. And can you just kind of describe some of your experiences as you try to, you're uniquely positioned, right? It is my understanding you are the first African-American woman to lead the Nashville office. Can you just kind of talk a little bit about what you've seen in terms of change and, has the ceiling been broken because you became the first, and we all know in our culture we get first and they happen 20, 30 decades later. So talk about being the first and what changes you've seen since you have been in your position.
I'm the first African-American, period, to hold this position. And it's an incredible honor, right? But from the moment I took this position, I felt the incredible weight of what that representation means. And so that means that I am required to make sure that other Black people, are represented. That, this office is reflective not only of the community, but also it creates opportunities for other Black people and people of color to practice law and to make their career here. I don't think that the glass ceiling has been broken at all. I mean, my swearing in was a great ceremony where people came out to Tennessee State and enjoyed that moment with me, but the challenges have been real. So having a seat at the table really doesn't mean anything if nobody's listening to you at the table. Wow. It also is, it's frustrating. I deal with the microaggressions on a larger scale. My voice is often, they attempt to silence it by other more powerful voices in the room. I was about to say the criminal legal system, but so many spaces are still occupied by male-dominated environments. And so it's challenging. And then to be the only, I'm one of 2 African-American public defender leaders in the state of Tennessee. I'm talking about then being the only person that looks like me at all in the room, the only person that's in my age bracket at all in the room. And when I go to conferences with other public defenders, when I go to meetings about the criminal legal system, it is incredibly challenging to hold that boulder of you're the first African-American to do a thing, but then you're the only one there that thinks like you, that acts like you, and willing to speak up about things. And that can be incredibly exhausting. I appreciate that representation is there. I think it matters 100%. I have seen what my journey has done for my daughter and other young women, and I see the pride that so many Black people have about my achieving this goal. And so, I mean, I'll keep shooting for the stars. There are other great things that I know I will accomplish, but the wait is real to be, I almost see it as what next? So we've elected our first African-American to do something, or we have our first Black to do something, but it's just a really incredible burden at times to bear when things don't change and you feel even those that are clapping for you necessarily are only doing so to say, like, one of my frustrations about Nashville particularly is that we pride ourselves on being so liberal. We're a liberal city. We're blue in a sea of red. This is where you want to be. And we are those things for the most part, except in our criminal legal system, where we are reflected like other cities across this country. And it is very, very challenging to carry the public defender message, but also to do so with the weight of, having to, sometimes I feel like, represent my race in this space as well. So,
I mean, as you all know, Aliyah, Illy and I have a daughter who is a young Black woman, and she looks up to the 3 of you. She looks up to Illy. She looks up to so many Black women who have been leaders in Gideon's Promise. And I think as a father, I'm just so grateful that my daughter has people like you to look up to in, doing the work that I think is most important. So let me just, I want to say thank you. I mean, you all are really doing incredibly important work, and you've been leading the way, certainly in Gideon's Promise. Let me ask you all, I want to ask one last question before I turn it over to Illy to wrap up. And that is this, as in this moment in time, there is a real focus on the extent to which racial oppression has driven every aspect of society, and people are taking to the streets. And there's a generation of public defenders that you all recruit, that we recruit at Gideon's Promise, who really see this work as activist work. And at times, public defenders, I think, can be torn between how they're supposed to respond in this moment. Do you feel any tension with your staff when it comes to sort of them wanting to be out supporting communities in this moment as activists, and sort of the work that needs to be done as public defenders? Is there any conflict there? And if so, how do you deal with that? And let me ask any of you who want to start off if you have any thoughts about that.
I think there is a tension because of the traditional way that the public defender role was seen, right? It was, I think the kinds of people who were attracted to this work. But I think, and I see it, in my younger attorneys who come to the work, who have a real grounding in what the criminal legal system is all about, the origins of it, the white supremacist origins of the criminal legal system. They're very steeped in it because they've been reading New Jim Crow and studying it, and are motivated to do this work because of what they've learned. They've got some thoughts about abolition, right? And so I think there's a tension for them as they come into the work because you've got a duty and obligation to individual clients, and you have to figure out how to navigate that individual client relationship when you also have these passions and views that you hold dear. But I don't think that while it's a tension, I don't think that they are incompatible. I think that I like when my young attorneys are out in the streets protesting on behalf of Black lives and part of National Lawyers Guild chapters here. I think that's a really important part of the work because I think that's one of the ways that we're going to transform, dismantle, disrupt the business as usual in the criminal legal system. I think, we've got to just be mindful as leaders how to guide them through that, how to make sure they understand the minefields that are there for their individual representation and for our larger organizational goals. But, I think if we're going to really change what happens in the criminal legal system, I don't think we're going to do it necessarily on an individual case-by-case basis. If we want systemic change, we need to bring, more attention to the bigger problems and disrupting and dismantling the system. And so we need people who have an understanding of that and an orientation to that and are working in coalition with community to try to do that work.
So I was just going to say, I think when you ask the question about tension, I think that the tension doesn't exist, and I may be speaking out of turn for Martisa and Shantae, but for 3 Black women from Tennessee, Alabama, and Georgia, respectively. There's not a tension there. Like, it's not that we don't understand the feelings or that we don't get it, right? I think I can confidently speak for the other 2 women here in that we get it. We get it deeply and feel it deeply, right? But I think where the tension comes in is that there is strategy to everything, and there is a reason that to consider different pieces to weave a strategy. And to me, the tension, if there is a tension, it comes from this isn't any different than the advocacy that you're doing on behalf of a client, where you have to think about opposing counsel and like understanding what your client's goals are. And I think it has to be a larger conversation. So I think those perceived tensions could be minimized in communication with our teams. And where I find the biggest challenges is in an action being taken where there hasn't been that strategic thinking. Because what I have found is that once we talk about the strategy behind it, they're like, oh, yeah, no, that makes sense. I see why there's a pause there, right? Or, okay, I didn't consider that. And it's like, that is exactly what I need you to do. I need you to have that consideration because we playing a long game, y'all. Like, we really are trying to be intentional about this. And so 100%, I find where I find challenge, right, is that the presumption that I just don't understand the issue will create a tension for me. Like, you're not going to tell me that I don't understand the issue, but perhaps we can have a conversation about what other considerations should be on the table and if there is a strategy that we can employ that is more effective. Because nothing we do is in a silo, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. And we're not in a vacuum. And there are consequences, oftentimes unfair consequences, that our clients bear the brunt of. And we have to be constantly thinking about that if we're doing this work. I think activism work is noble, important work. And I think we need to be thinking intentionally about how we do that work alongside of our work without compromising the client-centered work that we say we're here to do. And I think those things don't have to be in tension, and we can work as a team, as we do with other things, to implement strategies that are more impactful. But I think when it comes to really things that I think our team members may think are small, like social media posts and making statements in certain areas or arenas or spaces, those things don't happen in a silo. And it is much easier if we could collaborate on them and talk through them and ask me your questions rather than assuming that I don't understand the issues, right?
Yeah.
I think that's where there's a rub, but there's a difficulty.
I just want to add real quick that I think all of that is spot on. And without that strategy, without that remembering that the work we do is not in a silo and that our clients are always going to be the ones to suffer the most by what we do, without that, I think that we risk our client-centered mission. We put all of that in jeopardy when we don't have that strategic focus, when we're not deciding, how we respond to an injustice. And I think that is sort of the tension of leadership sometimes, because when I was just doing the direct representation, I didn't have to use the same lens that I use as a leader. And oftentimes I do think that is the rub, because now in leadership, people often believe or they feel like you are trying to limit their activism or limit their voice in that area. And it is our role at times to remind. One of my dear colleagues on this call, who I won't call out, told me in one of our strategic planning days that, as public defenders, we sometimes have to stay in our lane. And our lane is recognizing what our clients need and trying to help accomplish those goals. And our clients have to be at the center of everything we do. And at times, if what we're trying to do as activists puts us in direct conflict with what we need to do for our clients, then we have to be reminded that we are rooted in our client-centered representation. And sometimes that does create a challenge when people haven't thought through that strategically. And you have to remind them of that oftentimes after the fact, after their decisions have been made.
I'm over here cheering and jumping up and down when I hear.
And I'm reminded I surround myself with brilliant people. I'm good at surrounding myself with brilliant people.
Especially brilliant Black women rap.
Amen.
Okay, so I'm just so excited and just your responses to that. Just the last thing, and I have one last question and ask if you all, in 20 seconds, right? Martisa talked about the clients. You guys all talked about your defenders. You talked about your support staff in your offices. Because when we say public defender at Gideon's Promise, we talk about everyone in your office that is supporting the clients, right? What parting words do you have for the defenders and the people you serve?
What I say to my staff a lot is to always center the client, because I think that's where people get into trouble in any of these issues that we're talking about, that it's about the clients first. And so to keep that in mind, and that means sometimes stepping back from what you want to do, what you think is supportive of a bigger goal. You've got to think about who the client is and what's best for them. And if you don't have an answer to that, then you need to go sit with the clients and learn a little bit more about them. So that would be my advice for people.
Aisha?
I think mine would be a message that our work should be centered in excellence. And excellence is distinct from perfection, right? And so as we're dealing with all the things that are happening in the world, as we represent clients, we want them to understand that we are doing the best we can. And in order for them to know that, we have to be doing the best we can, right? And that can be different at times, but we want to be rooted in excellence, and we want to be providing that at all times in the work that we do, because that is going to be what builds trust and builds bridges with the client communities that we so often and fundamentally want to be partnering with. So I think excellence at its core is what we want to be striving for.
And finally, Martisa?
I think my parting words would just be thank you to other people who have dedicated themselves to this fight and to doing this work the way that it should be done. It is a incredible task to be a public defender, but there is no other occupation or calling more worthy than this one. And so for everybody who's out there doing this work in this fight, taking it to the courthouses every day in some of the most harshest times right now in the pandemic, I just really say thank you for that. There are many, many other warriors doing this work daily, and we oftentimes need to be seen. We oftentimes need to be heard. And it is nothing wrong with at times somebody just saying thank you. So I am so thankful for this community of people and hope that we can, in our own way, chip away at this incredibly harsh system and work towards a world of something better. So.
Well, thank you all so much. Martisa Johnson from the Nashville Defender Office, Aisha McWay, Still She Rises, and Shantae Parker, the Neighborhood Defender Services of Detroit. I thank you, ladies, so much for joining us today. And just in true form or fashion, this is Askia.
And this is John Rapping
it up.
Hey, Il, before we hit that outro, why don't you tell people how to order a copy of the book in your radio voice?
In my radio voice?
Yeah, in your radio voice.
Okay. Get your copy of Gideon's Promise, a public defender movement to transform criminal justice at Amazon, IndieBound, Beacon Press, or wherever books are sold. Pre-order today, and a portion of proceeds will help us support public defenders.
Oh, that was good. That was good.
Thank you for listening to Gideon's Promise, the podcast, with Jonathan Rapping. For more information on the topics covered and featured guests, please visit our website at gideonspromise.org. And finally, please subscribe, share, and let us know what you think.